According to a recent study from this Forbes article, 79% of retirees will not be able to afford retirement based on their current standard of living. Now, in this video, I'm going to show you why I don't buy that. We're going to unpack these myths. Again, my name is Nick Covio. For those of you joining me for the first time, I'm a certified financial planner with Swell Financial. And when I read articles like this, it makes me want to pull my hair out. And no, that's not directed at the people who haven't saved enough for retirement. It's at the media for having these clickbait headlines that are targeting and pandering towards fear. And so what we're going to do today is we're going to look at a real life case study. Clients that came to me in their 50s with only a few $100,000 saved to their name for their retirement account in 7 short years. With actionable steps, they were able to turn around their retirement to the point where they now control their destiny. All right, let's start by diving a bit deeper and unpacking what that 79% figure actually represents, right? By no way, shape, or form is it saying 8 out of 10 Americans cannot afford to retire. What it's suggesting is that 79% of soon-to-be retirees cannot afford to spend the same amount of money they are today while they're still working in retirement. Now, I think there's still something you can do about that, and we'll unpack that later on in this video. But again, this is where that headline is very misleading, right? It's leading you to believe that it's utter and complete destruction, where you're running out of money. But no, we need to make a few lifestyle changes, and again, we'll dive into that in just a minute. The second gripe I have with this article is it clearly states in the headline that the American retirement system will fail retirees. That's simply not the case. The last time I checked, the stock market is the single greatest wealth creation tool on the planet. That and compounding interest. And so it is not the stock market that will fail you. No, highly unlikely. It is not being able to save enough for retirement. A few other common beliefs while we're on this topic that I've seen in this article and so many that I want to debunk real quickly for you before we jump into our case study. Number one, you need a massive amount of savings to retire comfortably. Absolutely not true at all. It's about knowing your number, what works for you and your family, and the amount that you can comfortably live off of, and then we'll figure out how to work backwards to understand how much you can save for retirement. The second myth I see all the times that drives headline articles is that Social Security is going away. That's going insolvent, it's going bankrupt, and the reality is if you're close to receiving Social Security, you're already receiving Social Security, it's highly unlikely that's going to be taken from you. There's a number of measures that Congress can take to be able to extend the solvency of Social Security. This is a bigger topic for another video, but these types of headlines are nothing but fear-driven, and you do not need to pay attention to them. And the third common belief that I see that drives headlines all the time is that it's too late to get started. You're done, you're doomed, right? You're destined for poverty. That's absolutely not the case. There is always something that you can do. So this is why working with a financial advisor is so critical, to be able to look at your plan, review your numbers, see if you're on track and whether or not you need to course correct. And so the next time you see one of these articles, I know you're going to be ready. You're going to be trained. You've watched this video. You know what to look for. You could spot these common misbeliefs and you can just read on right past them. All right, so let's take a look at one of my actual clients that I worked with. Their names have obviously been changed, but they came into my office about 7 years ago and they said, Nick, we really want to retire. We need to get serious, and this is our number one goal. At the time, they had a couple $100,000 saved to their name. And, at first glance, I wasn't thinking, are we even going to be a fit here? Is there a lot that they could do? But they promised me, they assured me, hey, we're serious. And so what I want to show you just in this demonstration here is just the power of a few small but intentional and deliberate choices and how that can compound over time. So let's dive in to their situation. So Joe and Maria, they both had IRAs. Now, Joe's a couple years older. He's fully retired. He started collecting Social Security earlier. When I first met Joe, he was not working. He was enjoying the retirement lifestyle. He was waiting for Maria to finish up her work. And then they were thinking maybe we move out of state or do something like that. But Maria was still working. She had a sizable 401k. And they were getting close to paying off their house. They didn't know what to do. And so although they didn't come with, the biggest retirement account balance, there was still a lot of good that they did. So when you read a headline, what we saw at the beginning of this video of you don't have enough saved for retirement, or Americans are doomed when it comes to how much they've saved for retirement, it's absolutely not the case. So we can see for Joe and Maria, they lived really well beneath their means, right? Maria's 58. She wants to retire in the next 5 years. Joe's 65. As I mentioned, he's currently retired. Their goals, right? Looking at their net worth here, wanting to retire in the next couple of years. Maria makes a really good income. She makes $90,000 a year. Now, at the time, Joe, as I mentioned earlier, was not working. We decided to change that and say, hey, Joe, let's maybe consider getting a part-time job at least, right? So that way we're not draining anything from any of our retirement accounts, and we can add to any amount that we bring in. So then Joe was collecting Social Security. Maria was going to delay hers till full retirement age. And then, like I mentioned earlier, they were living well beneath their means. They weren't spending a whole lot, right? They were close to paying off their mortgage. They just didn't know what to do next. And the other thing that we saw here was these were changes that we put into place, but at the time they weren't doing anything. She was getting her 401k match. And I was asking, hey, what are you doing with that extra money? Well, maybe we spend it, maybe we save it. We really don't have a game plan. And so when we take a look at the work that we were able to do together, we were able to look at, hey, how much further do we have to go? Let's name it. Let's get really specific with your retirement advice. Where are we going, right? Because if we don't have a plan, right, what's the old adage? Any route will take us there, right? And so when I compare this, right, their current situation, they look great now, but 5 years ago, they were off track. They couldn't retire. They could not cover $5,000 after taxes adjusted for inflation in retirement, 5 to 7 years from now. So I said, hey, let's do this. Let's go to the drawing board. We'll figure out, are we getting close to paying off our mortgage? How much can we use to save towards retirement? How seriously are we about this? And then do we want to relocate, right? They were living in California and they said, hey, it's our dream to live in North Carolina. We really want to live by the mountains. We love the Smokies, right? And we know the cost of living is a little more affordable there. So we could sell our house for a decent premium and we could live into something smaller, more affordable, and we could pocket the difference. So when we look at the back end of their plan, a couple things that we did. Now let's take a look at this. So I said, okay, if this is really our plan in place here, let's go ahead and take a look. When we go to plans, we could see we did a couple things here, right? They were going to sell their house for $520,000. Now, these numbers are very simplified, but they were going to buy something for $300,000-$400,000, and they were going to use the proceeds, right, after taxes to be able to invest in a brokerage account. Right? Fortunately for them, being in the house for more than 5 years, it being their primary residence, they had up to $500,000 of capital gains that they were able to have excluded. So they were able to stuff their brokerage account with some nice padding there. A couple other big changes that we made. We went in and said, okay, well, once you are finished paying the mortgage, right? At the time, there was only $18,000 left on the mortgage. So the next thing that we wanted to look at was, okay, well, 5 years ago, they had about $75,000 left on the mortgage. So let's start to get really aggressive towards that, right? And so today they sit here with less than $20,000 left on the mortgage at a really nice rate. And before Maria retires, they're going to be mortgage free. So again, going back to this article that 79% of retirees don't have enough saved, that's absolutely not correct. When it comes to the situation of Joe and Maria, they're living beneath their means, right? What's going to happen for Joe and Maria is that their mortgage is going to be paid off. They have no car payments, right? They're not commuting as much to work anymore. Transition into Medicare is going to be at a much more affordable and lower rate, right? Their income's going to go down. Their tax brackets are going to come down. They're moving into a more favorable state with taxes, right? They've sold their house. They've padded their brokerage account, right? And if they want to, they can choose, like Joe did, to work part-time to give them more retirement income and put less stress on their retirement portfolio. So they made their plans, but the key thing here was knowing what was most important to them. They said, hey, I want to be out of my job in 5 years. I want to be out of California. I want to be in a different state. We've dreamt about being in this spot. We love the mountains and it's more affordable. And so what was most important was understanding what they could cut out, what they could live without. And so they made their plans. They stuck to it for 7 years. They diligently paid down their mortgage. They saved more to a brokerage account. They said they were going to buy the house. They went to visit several times in North Carolina to be able to look at different houses and different areas and different mountain ranges to say, hey, this is where we want to be. So they stuck to their plan. They figured out what they could do without. They had the action, the timeline, and then they ultimately implemented it. And now they're going to be in a lower tax bracket. And so when we begin to look at this all, remember, it's super important to understand that retirement, your retirement, is based on you and your number, nobody else's, right? There's plenty of levers and toggles, like I just mentioned, that you can pull to be able to make your numbers work. So we know for Joe and Maria that they could actually spend more now that they're on track. They control their own destiny. Like, let's look here. They went from being able to spend $5,000 a month to now being able to spend $6,000 or $6,500 if they really wanted to stretch it. Now, what's so cool about this is if they wanted to spend less, but they wanted to retire early, all we had to do is come in here and see, well, do those numbers still work, right? Joe's retired, he's working part-time, but he could hang it up anytime that he wants to. And we could run the numbers to say, does that still work? It actually does, right? They could trim this number down. So again, retirement is all about having options and understanding what you're willing to do without, what you're willing to give up, what sacrifices you want to make. So again, when you see these headlines, whether it's 79% of retirees don't have saved enough, Social Security is going bankrupt, or it's too late for you to save, remember, it comes back to your plan. Now, not every client I meet with is rubber stamped and ready to go with my retirement. That's hardly the case. So if you find yourself resonating with Joe and Maria, watching this video feeling like you may be behind or you don't have clarity on your retirement number or how much further you have to go, know that clients like Joe and Maria are absolutely some of my favorite clients to work with because we get the opportunity to have measurable progress, to put those changes into place and to see with hard work, determination, and sticking to the plan what those changes result in over time. So if you have questions, if you want an assessment to see where you're at, go ahead and click on the link below in the description to fill out the assessment and get started, to give us some of your information. We'll meet together, review that information you've provided, put together a plan, and review it together to see where you're at, what steps and actions you could take to put together your retirement plan.